Some people blame all their problems on their parents. If I had just been reared right, I wouldn't have this problem or that problem. And sometimes parents are blamable, but sometimes they aren't. We're going to have some discussion on some of the problems that teens have nowadays and see if we can't get at the cause of some of these so that we can have a remedy. We hope you'll join us for this program.
The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented. Welcome to Help Yourself to Health with Dr. Agatha Thrash of Uchee Pines Institute. And now, here's your host, Dr. Thrash.
There are some problems that youngsters have, that older people have, that can be blamed on their parents' deficiencies. I remember one that a lot of people tell me is that, oh, I wish my parents had made me practice a certain musical instrument, then I could be quite accomplished today, but as it is, I am not accomplished on this instrument, and if only my parents had done the right thing by me. Now, sometimes the parents should be blamed, but sometimes the child is so resistant to any kind of suggestion by the parents that a great deal of maneuvering has to occur by the parents in order to acquire cooperation. To practice piano was one that I studied a good bit. My children didn't want to learn music. They wanted to be out of doors. They wanted to be doing some other kind of activity. They loved to read. They wanted to do library research. They did not want to practice a musical instrument. Well, they had certain chores that they always had to do. One of those was clear the table and wash the dishes. So I would say to them, now I will do this chore for you as long as I hear the piano going, but once the piano stops, then you have to come and do the chore. So you can imagine that I heard a lot of piano practice as long as I was still washing dishes. But when I got through with the dishwashing, then the piano stopped too. Then with making beds, another of my children had to make all the beds in the house. I would make the beds if he would do the piano practice. So in this way I maneuvered things so that he would do the practicing. Now if I had not in some way been able to require my children to learn music, they would today not be very musical because they certainly were not interested in disciplining themselves to do that. But there are certain problems that parents need to take more action in their children's lives, and one of those is the physical problem involving the facial complexion. Acne can be to a large degree helped by the kind of program that the child is on. First, if the child is not pushed so that maturity occurs too early, there's a good chance that the child will have a smooth complexion right up from the cradle on. How is it that one can slow down the maturation of the person? Well, that will be the subject of some of our topics in this program. Now, with acne, once the person has it, then there are some things that you can do that will help. Eliminate all junk foods, whatever it may be. Just get rid of them. Eliminate all dairy products. I have found that dairy products are often involved in a child's acne. If it isn't involved, if you eliminate the dairy products and it doesn't, or any other food, and eliminating it does not cause a regression in the pimples or the red spots, then you may, if you wish to add that back to the diet, you may go back to it. Now with fats, fatty foods, especially things like peanut butter, chocolate, hot chocolate, candies of various kinds, which often have shortening of some kind in them, all sorts of little snack crackers, those should all be eliminated. Any kind of junk food, anything that comes from a vending machine, most things that come from fast food places, all of those should be eliminated. We should build the menu from the ground up so that all the dishes are made from the best foods that we can find. Now, modern dermatologists will sometimes tell you that food has nothing to do with acne, that it isn't involved with it at all. In my experience, I say that these are young men and they have not yet had enough experience to know that foods are sometimes involved in acne, and a person can eliminate a certain aspect of their diet and they are much better. Becoming a full vegan vegetarian will go far toward eliminating acne in some individuals. So I recommend that for people who have acne, and it can be persons who have acne can sometimes be helped remarkably by some changes in diet. Also by drinking plenty of water, getting good exercise, keeping the extremities warm. All of these things can help with acne in some individuals. Unfortunately, not in all of them. But they may help, it may not totally eliminate, and so even if they get some benefit, that can be very helpful. Another problem that children have nowadays that they didn't used to have is intertrigo. Intertrigo is a rash that occurs where two skin surfaces fit together. So between the folds of the buttocks, under the breasts, in any place where there are two, under the arms, where two skin surfaces may be in close apposition to each other. In these instances, you may have an intertrigo or a rash, which often has both the sweat as well as some infectious agent. It can be a bacterium, it can be fungus involved in the intertrigo. The important thing is to, if the person is overweight, to have the person lose weight and to keep those surfaces separated by some kind of fabric or garment that can be worn that holds the surfaces apart, and that can be very helpful for that. One may also need to use an anti-fungus remedy such as vinegar. Plain vinegar may be all that's required. If the surface is raw, I don't have to tell you that the patient won't want you to use vinegar, and so you should not. Unless you dilute it really quite a lot, such as 1 tablespoonful in a quart of water, then you can acidify the skin, and that also helps quite a lot. Now, these problems with teens are on the minor side, but they can be very irritating and annoying. But there is another one that teens are now involved in, they didn't used to be involved in, and that's osteoporosis. And I have here Dr. Don Miller, who is going to talk with us about the subject of osteoporosis, especially in young people.
Did you know that I used to play the piano?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I took the lessons, and Dr. Thrash has mentioned how it's usually the child who doesn't really stay with it, and I played that Papa Hayden's dead and gone so many times my family says quit playing the piano. But she mentioned something interesting, that her children would rather be outside playing or doing other things or reading, and those are good things too. But we have a major problem going on today. A few years ago, I was flying back from Germany, and I was reading one of the airline magazine, and there was a wonderful article, and the title was Sick Kids. And it said that children nowadays have almost all the diseases of older people, and osteoporosis was the first thing they talked about. And it mentioned a number of things, basically 3 main things that's causing the osteoporosis today. And the first thing they mentioned, and you're going to see this in the literature a lot, is the overuse of soft drinks. Now, they will go on to say it's replacing milk in the diet. That's not the problem. It's just the soft drinks themselves, high in phosphoric acid, which causes, matter of fact, I think that's why they call them soft drinks. It causes the bones to lose its calcium, making them soft, making them brittle, and causing the bones to become osteoporotic at very young ages. And so it's this lots of colas, whatever the sodas are, the children need to get off of the sodas and start drinking more decent things like water. Water is the best thing in the world that they can drink. The second thing is the junk foods that we have. Junk foods are going to be high, almost always, in sodium. Sodium also, when it's high in the body, causes calcium to fall. Children need to get away from the high sodium foods. Also, when they eat a lot of meat products, high in protein, when the protein goes up, the calcium goes down. And now we're into this protein craze, it seems, in this country for people who are overweight, and children are becoming major problems with obesity. And so we want to get away from the junk foods and the high protein foods, get away from the soft drinks. And the third thing, quite simply, is get them off the couch and out the door, doing something more active. We're finding that we're growing a generation, maybe even for the last couple of generations, that's fixed to the TV, which is fixed to the monitor of the computer, which is fixed to the video games, and children are no longer getting the exercise like they used to get. I remember when I was a child, no one stayed in the house when it was a nice day. And as a matter of fact, even when it was a bad day, you did not want to stay in the house. You were outside playing, whatever it was you're going to play, but we were always in the streets. And of course, back then the streets were a little bit safer. And I know that parents are between a rock and a hard place today. Send them outside the door. It's no more safer in there than it is maybe in front of your television. But find a safe place and find some type of activity a child can get involved in. And this scourge of today's society of childhood osteoporosis. The last thing the author of this article said in this magazine is, he says, parents, your children are just little yous. And his recommendation was, clean up your act. Your children are going to see you and do exactly what you do. And so get your life together. Show your children a good example of health and of a healthy lifestyle, and your children will try to emulate that pattern. I remember one time I was sitting there at the table when I was just a little boy, and my father was eating, and I wanted to be just like my dad. And so every time he put that spoon to his mouth, I put the spoon to my mouth. And I was amazed to find out that I finished my bowl of soup the same time he finished his bowl of soup. Children will look at their parents and try to emulate them. Give them something to emulate. And very few parents today, Dr. Thrash, do that.
Yes, that is a major problem, that the parents do not make proper role models. Another way that parents need to supervise the work of their children is in the way that they brush the teeth. They need to teach their child exactly how to brush the teeth. And the proper way is with the toothbrush, they do a jiggling motion at about a 45-degree angle with the teeth, so that at the gum line, the brushing is done at that area. Then some brushing down in this way so that almost individual teeth are brushed. That can be very helpful as well to remove food particles from between the teeth. Carious teeth are a serious problem with children, and as a child grows older, the carious teeth that they develop in early childhood can become a thing that shortens their life or makes them more susceptible to other kinds of diseases, including such things as heart disease and strokes. So the strength of the teeth is an important thing. Flossing should never be overlooked. Once a child is old enough and has permanent teeth, they should be taught how to take off a piece of dental floss, maybe about a foot long, wrap it around the fingers, and learn how to tease it between the teeth and remove everything that's between the teeth, including the plaque that builds up between meals and overnight. So the floss should actually be rubbed against both tooth surfaces in between the teeth. So it's rubbed against this tooth and it's rubbed against this tooth to remove the plaque that might be building up there. Dried fruits are very important as a caries promoter, and so dried fruit should always be followed by brushing and flossing. Dried fruit can be used for a meal, and 2 or 3 times a day the child should both floss and brush. Especially important is that the third meal, if there is a third meal of the day, that meal be brushed and flossed after, so that there will not be the buildup overnight of acids inside the mouth. Now, an appeal for a 2-meal plan for children. Most children in today's world need only 2 meals a day, and that's beginning at about the age of 2 or 3. You can train the child to a 2-meal plan that instantly diminishes the risk of getting cavities. The more times a day that a person eats, the greater the risk of getting cavities. But this can be minimized by the flossing and brushing that a person can do. Now, it's it's an important thing for us to know that our children today are very much overweight. Parents can do, in fact, they control the weight of the child, and they should be assertive in this area and make certain that their children are not overweight. So I've asked Dr. Miller to talk with you about this problem in teens and children.
I remember when I was in grade school, there was a very fleeting instance of an overweight child, and they were always the brunt of all of the jokes, and they were always on the low side of the pecking order, and which was a really unfortunate thing for the poor children. And things haven't changed as much as being on the lower end of the pecking order, but it certainly has changed in how many people fall into that category now in our schools. Young people are plagued today. It is a pandemic, basically a problem of the Western world of obesity in children. Of course, that opens the door to many, many other problems that are going to come down the line. What causes obesity in children? Well, it basically takes its very beginning in infancy. The way a child is fed. It seems like mothers now are going more and more away from breastfeeding and going into putting them on the formulas, and the formulas often are based on some animal products in there, which is going to accelerate the growth. And as the child grows more, they are weaned onto more animal products, which are all basically made. You think back in the 1950s, the average cow was producing about 12 quarts of milk a day. Now it's up to around 23 or 24 quarts a day. There's something that's changed drastically. Matter of fact, in the 50s, the 12-quart milk cow was one of the champion cows. It was more like 8 to 9 quarts. And all of these, the hormones, the growth hormones, are passing into the child, causing them to get more weight. Also, the junk foods of today, they're empty calories. They have a lot of calories. They're going to go straight to the wrong places of the body. We need to get away from there. But another one of the main problems is the way they spend their lives. They spend their lives in front of monitors, basically television and computer monitors. And they have found that children who watch television have a slower metabolism than a child who's just sort of sitting around doing nothing else besides watching television. Metabolism gets very slow, which means you're going to start getting very large. Now, I've often been asked this question after I've said something like this. Well, do you mean then watching 3ABN is not good for my child? I want you to do a little experiment. Watch this program and mark on a piece of paper for the time that you're watching this half hour how many times the scene changes. And then the next time you're in a department store that has one of those big banks of televisions, I want you to stand back so you aren't infected by what they're showing, and mark down, have a stopwatch or a watch with a second hand, and see how many times the scene changes in even 1 minute. You're going to find the scene changes many, many times. Sometimes every 3 to 4 seconds, you have a different scene, a different shot, a different camera, a different whole situation. And when this happens, the mind finally gets to the point where it says, we are out of here. It goes into a sort of a delta wave pattern. You're not really, you're not processing the information, which sometimes is good, but the bad part is, if you're seeing it, it's going somewhere in this head. And when you watch your television like this, it slows down your process and you start getting the larger frame. But also, as you're watching these programs, they are advertising things that are made to promote obesity. Now, they're not going to say, eat these things, it's going to make you fat. No, that's not what they're saying, but they're going to make you fat. They're going to be high in fat, high in sugar, high in sodium, high in whatever it is that causes our bodies to grow larger. And so we need to stay away from those types of things that causes a child. I've been in grocery stores, and you see the mother pushing the child through the aisles, and pretty soon they come to a certain product that apparently that child saw or in cartoons just this morning. I want that! And they'll throw a tantrum until the mother puts 2 boxes of it into the cart, and the child is now satisfied. And trouble is, that very food is going to cause them to be obese, which is going to make them handicapped in many ways for the rest of their lives, both psychologically, emotionally, socially, physically, every way you can think of. Obesity is not a good thing. Now, if you're trying to grow a sumo wrestler, go right ahead, but I would suggest that we do not turn our children in the sumo wrestlers in their infancy and in their childhood and in their teen years. You're just shortchanging them in their lives. And so get them out exercising, get them on good food, and we might eliminate this problem.
It will certainly go far toward helping with that. While I have not seen a child have a heart attack, I have seen children with hardening of the arteries. At a very early age, we used to say that hardening of the arteries was a problem with advanced old age. But now we are seeing it in children. In fact, even in World War II, there was not an autopsy done on an American soldier that didn't show rather advanced hardening of the arteries. Reports are rather stunning in this regard. So we want to do what we can to keep our children from getting heart disease later in life. We are seeing heart attacks earlier and earlier, and the more the person weighs, the greater the chance is that they will get both a heart attack and a stroke. So we're combating that by combating the wrong habits in childhood. Make certain that your child's cholesterol is not high, that the triglycerides are not high, blood sugar is not high, and that their homocysteine level is not high. They can get a high homocysteine level even very early in life. There may also be some other markers of potential problems in the future. Fibrinogen may be high. C-reactive protein may be high. These are all laboratory tests, and one can easily obtain these from an ordinary clinical laboratory, such as in a hospital or one of the standalone laboratories that are very freely available nowadays. Now, along with these dietary problems and physical problems come some mental problems such as depression. Depression in childhood is getting far more common, even in infancy. And I'd like Dr. Miller to talk with us a little bit about the subject of depression in childhood.
You know, I mentioned a little bit ago about this article I read in this magazine in the airline flying out of Germany. And one of the things he mentioned was depression. And he said something so startling in this article. He said that children today, your average child out there in the homes, has more anxiety than a child who was a psychiatric patient in the 1950s. There's something gone wrong with our society. I read an interesting book a few years ago, and it's, forgive the subject or the title, is called On Killing. And basically it was a book on the subject of killing. And not murder, but basically the mindset of the military man going from the Revolutionary War up to Vietnam. And I would say now it goes beyond Vietnam to the other wars that have come since then. And basically what they found out is back in the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, even Korean War, that only about 10% of the soldiers in combat actually aimed their gun with the intent to take a man's life, because there's just something innate in the human body that says, this isn't what I want to be doing right now. They found in Vietnam it was reversed, 90% did. Now what made the difference in all these years? Matter of fact, there was one instance in this book, it talked about a Civil War Confederate soldier who was at the Battle of Gettysburg. As he was marching through that field, across that long field up to that wall, they said that upon his death, because he was killed in this battle, they checked his weapon and they found 26 loads in his weapon. That means he'd walk a ways, stop, and ram another one down there. Walk away, stop, and ram another one. He never fired his gun one time. But something has changed, and we feel like that the depression we have right now is because we have changed in our whole society. We have things called situational ethics today. It depends on the situation, how you're going to respond to something. We find that most teenagers feel like there are some times that lying is necessary. It depends on the situation. They find that suicide is a viable option for their problems. There's these things creeping into the society today, and I believe it's a society at fault because we're giving them false messages. They're watching lifestyles on television which are totally aberrant, totally foreign to the human organism. You see, there's something inside this body that says, do this right, but they receive these mixed signals. A number of years ago, when I was in the Marine Corps, we had a television monitor rolled in, a video monitor rolled into our office because they had made an advertisement for the Marine Corps. We wanted to watch it to see how it was because I was in public affairs. And they had videoed, it was in the middle of the day, and you know what's on the middle of the day on anything besides 3ABN is soap operas. They filmed this thing, and so they put the video into the machine, and we watched, and of course we got a big section of soap opera before the ad came on because they didn't know exactly when it was going to come on. And so we sat there, and it's about 5 minutes worth of soap opera before it came on. What I saw in that 5 minutes did not leave me for months afterwards. There was one bad situation after another bad situation, and it made me depressed just to watch it. We find that the society, the atmosphere that the person's growing up in today is depressing. Food's depressing, the lifestyle's depressing, the fact that there's just no ambition, there's no drive to get on, there's nothing better. We're finding today that God has been taken out of the schools, out of the homes, out of everywhere, and when you're in that situation, you cannot help but be depressed. And so what we need to do is get children back into knowing there's someone out there that really does care. We've got too many broken homes. I'm from a broken home. Broken homes cause a child to lose their bearings. And if they have no place else to turn to, they're going to turn to things, and we've been seeing a lot in the press in the last months about what's happening with the antidepressant drugs, depressive drugs for children. They're leading them to suicide, which they already feels a viable option. Dr. Thrash, depression is a major problem with children today.
Yes, it is. And one good thing that we know that can help depression is exercise. If a person gets out in the sunshine and exercises vigorously, that goes far toward taking away the depression. And if a person eats a very simple diet, that goes far toward taking away the depression. If the relationship between the parents and the child is a very good one, that also goes far toward helping a person to get rid of a depression. Now, parents sometimes feel that they have no control over these matters, but often it's because they don't really try. If you will make an attempt to get close to your child, to have your child to love you, and that you obviously love them, and that what you're doing for them, the counsel that you give them, is for their good, they will often be very cooperative with any kind of suggestion that you give. If your child loves you, they will usually want to do what you want them to do. Now, I hope that some of these suggestions will find a good lodging for you and that it will help you with your child.